All right, well, next up is number 12, South Carolina against Georgia. The Bulldogs are out of the top 25 after losing to Boise State at the Georgia Dome. Meanwhile, South Carolina fell behind East Carolina 17-0 before senior quarterback Stephen Garcia came off the bench to lead the Gamecocks to a 19-point win. Now, Spurrier's won a Heisman Trophy. He's coached a Heisman winner. So far be it from me to tell him how to handle his quarterbacks. But what's the deal with the way Spurrier's handling those guys under center?
Well, it's the same way it's always been. He's been very consistent. Jill, you've known him for years. He treats the quarterback position like he would treat the offensive guard. He doesn't think that because they're a quarterback that they get special dispensation if they don't play a good game or if they're not playing a nice quarter. He'll go ahead and yank them. I remember one time when he alternated quarterbacks at Florida, Noah Brandeis and Doug Johnson, on plays, not series. Every play a new guy came in. So he tells them all the same thing. Either play well or come over here and stand next to me. Yeah, the old ball coach is in control. Now, as for Georgia, you know, Coach Ricks was on the hot seat with that 6-7 season last year, but now coming off a Boise State loss, how important is this game? Do you think he's going to make it through the season? Well, it's an extremely important game, Jill, and no one at Georgia wants to talk about the rest of the season now. They just want to talk about what's in front of them. Boise State, everyone knew that'd be a difficult game, but this is the most important one because it's a conference game. It's South Carolina, the preseason favorite in the SEC East. If they go 0-2, unfortunately, it'll become a referendum on Coach Mark Richt and whether he should still be the head coach, and that's unfortunate. So many great things have happened at Georgia. A good man in charge there, and the kids will have to answer all those questions. I don't think that's fair this early in the season, but that's reality. Yeah, it'll be fun to see a big SEC matchup this early.
Heisman update. Let's take a look at some of the front runners we've got going on. Alshon Jeffrey, no touchdowns for the South Carolina playmaker on Saturday against ECU, but he did have 5 catches for 92 yards. Justin Hunter averaged almost 26 yards a catch last year. Looks like he's on pace this season. And Joe Adams tied an SEC record with 2 punt returns for touchdowns in Arkansas's victory over Missouri State. Tim, does anybody jump out to you in these 3?
I like Alshon Jeffrey. How can you not? I think he's one of the best wide receivers in all of college football. And with Marcus Lattimore in the backfield, that play-action game, getting Alshon down the field and Stephen Garcia throwing him the football, I think he's the front runner as far as wide receivers go.
Welcome back to SEC Gridiron Live. Let's take a final look at our thumb-in question of the night. Who is the most dangerous player in the SEC on offense? And Vic Ballard looks to be the winner with 53%. What do you guys think about that?
I'd have gone.
Our final game of the night, South Carolina versus Georgia after a slow start for the Gamecocks last Saturday. Garcia is back in the driver's seat this week, and the bus is headed to Athens. The bitter taste of defeat, will that be enough to boost the Bulldogs to a victory at home?
I don't think so. I like Stephen Garcia in South Carolina. I think Garcia is going to be playing with a lot of confidence off of last week, so I like the Gamecocks to get a win.
I think on the offense of Boise State really did a number on the Georgia defense last week. I liked Steve Spurrier in this offense versus the Bulldogs.
Orson Charles will have another good game at tight end for the Dogs, but I just Marcus Lattimore and South Carolina are too tough and physical.
It's a potent offense, man.
All right. As the top 5 Heisman contenders at number 5, Marcus Lattimore.
Lattimore had 112 yards rushing, 33 receiving, 3 touchdowns in the 56-37 win over East Carolina last week. Preseason first-team All-SEC, second-team All-American. This guy's just a true sophomore. Unbelievable upside.
At number is between the hedges. Mark Richt on the hot seat. It got a little hotter after last week's loss to Boise State. Now Georgia opens its SEC slate with a huge game against 12th-ranked South Carolina. The old ball coach Steve Spurrier wasn't happy with his Gamecocks either last week, who had to come back in the second half to beat East Carolina. So who are you going with here? South Carolina or Georgia? Cards up. 3, 2, 1. You said that, and by the way, you were wrong last week on a few, so don't say easy, but tell me why you like South Carolina.
Well, Marcus Lattimore, the true sophomore running back, he had 182 yards against Georgia last year in his SEC opener. Last week, he had 112 yards and 3 touchdowns. Georgia is going to have to stack the line of scrimmage to stop him, making themselves susceptible to reinserted quarterback Stephen Garcia and the top wide receiver around, Alshon Jeffrey. South Carolina's defense had no sacks last week against East Carolina, but the D-line is 3 deep, and they're facing a suspect Georgia offensive line that gave up 6 sacks.
Oh, yeah, offensively, South Carolina just much better than Georgia. And then don't forget, Stephen Garcia didn't start the game last week, but once he got in, he scored 5 touchdowns on 6 of his first drives. So he can put the ball in the end zone. Too much.
Expect a close game, though. You guys, the last 10 times these teams have met, it's been decided by 7 points or less. So we asked the nation, who you got, South Carolina or Georgia? They said
all right,
South Carolina. That would mean Georgia hasn't started 0-2 since '96. Mark Richt?
Mark Richt.
Their embarrassing loss to Boise State. The hot seat just got that much hotter for Mark Richt. So true or false today is a must-win for Mark Richt. 3, 2, 1. Yes, okay.
Yes.
We can all agree on that one.
Yes.
They haven't started 0-2 since '96, so make your statement.
The Georgia fan base is rough, and Mark Richt hasn't been to that SEC championship game since '05. It's been a while. With the SEC East being down in recent years, fans expect more. But Richt has only a 66% win rate in the SEC. For his career, he's 53-27. That doesn't cut it for Georgia.
Yeah, and they didn't handle the big stage well against Boise State. And it's not like it's a secret that his job is in jeopardy. That's a lot of pressure for a head coach to carry and the team. And don't forget, the last 2 years, he's only 14-13, his record. So doesn't look good for Mark.
Doesn't look good. So
good
we asked,
guy. Good guy.
Well, you know, good guys don't win games.
There you go.
Well, you're a good guy, though. We asked the nation, true or false today is a must-win for Mark Richt. He is a good guy.
He won a lot of games,
two great guys here.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
Okay, good. You guys got that one.
So true.
Oh, so true. It's so high you can't even see me below that.
All right, game number 3 on the docket. South Carolina going between the hedges to take on Georgia. How about this, guys? The last 10 times they've met, the game's been decided by 7 points or less. Georgia hasn't been 0-2 since 1996. Take your pick.
I'm well aware how close those games are. I've been involved some. You have to go with South Carolina. Marcus Latimer. I mean, last year against Georgia, he had 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is a man. He did that as a freshman. Last week, he scored 3 touchdowns again. South Carolina's too strong.
We're picking the same teams. I like South Carolina also, but not only because of Marcus Latimer. How about Stephen Garcia? Against East Carolina, if it wasn't there, he could throw it in the air. And if it's not there, he's going to pull it down and run it. Had 56 yards rushing on 5 attempts, but not 1, but 2 rushing touchdowns. So that dynamic dimension right there, I think South Carolina is too much for the Georgia Bulldogs.
I'm Heather Cox in Athens, Georgia, where Mark Richt's job security has been the topic of conversation all week following a 6-7 campaign a year ago and an opening loss to Boise State. Coach Richt is the first one to admit the pressure, saying this South Carolina game is monumental. Everybody's looking at it as a must-win. I have to remind people it's game 2 of a very long season. Last year, Georgia struggled to contain Marcus Latimer, who ran for nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. This year, the challenge could be even greater now that linebacker Alec Ogletree is out for 4 to 6 weeks after having surgery on his foot. A freshman and a walk-on will split time at that position, and Georgia is committed to having at least 2 players track Marcus Latimer on every play.
We want to get to some big headlines and stories around the college football landscape, and maybe none bigger than the headline coming out of Atlanta. A must-win for Georgia head coach Mark Richt after a very disappointing home opener at the Georgia Dome against Boise State. And Sean McDonough has the call on ESPN today at 4:30 as the Georgia Bulldogs welcome in the South Carolina Gamecocks. And Sean, we saw the headline coming out of the AJC, a must-win for Mark Richt. What is the vibe around the town? What are people saying about this game?
Well, Aaron, I was just reading those same articles in the local papers here, the Athens and Atlanta papers, and there were articles in both about a meeting of the board yesterday that runs Georgia Athletics. At that meeting, one board member said, many of us are concerned about the state of the football program, and another gentleman said, I'll echo that. And when I talked to Mark Richt, the coach, yesterday, asked him if today is one of the biggest games he's ever coached at Georgia, he said, it's huge because it's the top 2 teams in the preseason picks in the SEC, so the winner's going to have a leg up in that race. But he also said it's huge because if Georgia wins, it'll relieve some of the pressure that these players and coaches are feeling. And if they lose, that pressure intensifies. And there's no question the players are feeling the pressure. Yesterday we spoke to Orson Charles, the excellent tight end, asked him what they had to do to beat South Carolina. He said, we just need to relax. We're uptight. And I asked him, why are you uptight? And he said, we are all aware of the situation surrounding Coach Rick. We love him, and we don't want to play for anyone else. And we realize the best way to ensure that is to win. So maybe the Dogs can suit up David Pollock today and help stop that running game of the Gamecocks and Marcus Lattimore.
Sean, thanks so much. Great stuff. And David, you see that headline. You live in Athens, obviously a former Georgia Bulldog yourself. I mean, they had a meeting yesterday. You hear the players' reaction. Yeah. What's your reaction to all this?
Well, you want to see the players react like that. You want to see them get upset. You want to see them defend their coach. But you look at this season, and you look at after losing to Boise, you play another top 12 team in South Carolina. There is pressure. You have to look at the last 4 seasons with Coach Rick, and you have to be honest about it. Coach Rick will tell you they haven't performed up to where they need to. So this game is going to be crucial. It's going to be important. And every game moving forward, not just this one, for the rest of the season for the Georgia Bulldogs.
It's nice to hear the players say, you know,
we got his back.
Exactly. Yeah. It's nice to hear that.
And it's tough when you're a player because you feel you're answering all the questions. What about your coach? What about your coach? I don't know.
Have to step up and make a big play today, Lee.
South Carolina, Georgia. Marcus Lattimore, South Carolina's All-American running back, started the year by scoring 3 rushing touchdowns. Now he has 20 rushing touchdowns in his career. Plus, he's had 5 100-yard or more rushing games and only 14 games. Woo.
You talk about trouble versus ranked teams. You realize they're 1-8 last 9. And against the SEC, the last couple years, Georgia, in kind of a down couple years for the division, is 7-9. So the typically low-scoring matchup with South Carolina can really set the tone in the SEC East. Here comes the Gamecocks with Stephen Garcia back as starter. They are road favorites. But we're going to put the focus on Georgia for now, because if they can pull off the mild upset at home in a massive swing game, it could set them up with a favorable schedule to roll through the SEC East and send Spurrier home a loser. But a second loss, and the crescendo calling for coaching change is going to grow. You know, Athens is home to that veteran band, Widespread Panic.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a conditioning. Yeah, it's your favorite. That's a condition that's intensifying among the faithful. Only a victory today can curtail that curve.
Embarrassed.
Devastated.
Heartbreaking.
Sloppy.
Tragic. Brutal.
Really pathetic.
Georgia fans, by and large, are an angry bunch right now.
Bulldogs suck again.
It's not like Georgia lost to Boise and it was the first loss in a while. It's been something that's been kind of building up, and that's why a lot of the fans here are on edge.
The ugly truth is Georgia has been a fraud in the SEC for years.
The program has trended downward here of late. 2007, they win 11 games, but then it was 10, and then it was 8, and then it was 6 last year. And this year hasn't started off very good.
Disappointed.
Angry.
Let down.
Very, very unhappy.
Discontent.
I just don't think our coaching at the moment is up to par.
Kind of feel like maybe it's time for a change.
I'm starting to wonder if Coach Rick is the man for the job.
We get out coached, we get out classed. New season, same old Bulldogs. Mark Rick, when you're leaving town, don't forget to take Bobo with you. I'm sick and tired of it. Something has to change.
Those message boards blowing up because you feel like it's the same issues as in recent years. And you can't talk about a lack of talent at Georgia. You really can't. 9 picks in the first 3 rounds of the draft the last 3 years. Only a handful of teams have more than that. 2 of the top 4, Stafford and A.J. Green. And I know the recruiting services can be inexact in their ratings, but top 6 recruiting classes 4 out of the last 6 years. I mean, you go from 11 wins to 10 to 8 to 6, and keep in mind that Mark Richt has never started 0-2. It's getting ugly down there, David. I mean, you care a lot about this program, but they badly need a win today, maybe more than any team in the country.
Yeah, and they badly need a win, but it definitely needs to be a very competitive game, because you look at last week at Boise 35-21, it wasn't that close. And offensively, they didn't move the football. And every single year, it's year after year, you hear about the offensive line and how big they are and how physical they are. And then you come out and you can't run the football. One of the worst in the SEC a year ago. Last week, it was an 80-yard reverse that really sparked the offense, and that's it. The longest drive was less than 4 minutes. I mean, the longest drive of the day against Boise. That shouldn't happen when you're at the University of Georgia and you recruit that well.
To me, this is the biggest game that Mark Richt has ever coached in because of what's at stake. Coming off the 6-7 last year, putting himself now in position early, knowing how important these first 2 weeks were going to be. Boise State in week 1, and then you have this big game in a conference game. But with all this being said, and everybody, basically Georgia fans, just piling the dirt on top of Mark Richt and Georgia, they're 4 quarters away from everyone being happy. And Georgia, of course, there's Georgia. Now they're back. Yeah. That's how big a game this is. They lose this game, get rid of Mark Richt is what their fans are going to say. They win, and hey, we're going to win the SEC East. Where are you going to stay in Atlanta for the SEC title game?
Yeah, before we stick a fork in the guy, and let's take a look at his 11 years he's been there. You see what he's done. He's one of 9 coaches that win 90 games in the first 9 years as head coach. There's only Stoops, Patterson, and Paterno have a winning percentage better than the guy has. Listen to this. They lost to Boise State, but so did Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech went on and won and went into the Orange Bowl. There's time left. There's time left. Why are we putting the pressure on this guy now? Because it's a second game of the year.
Agree, and I don't think we're putting the pressure. I think the people in Athens are. But I also think there's been a trend. You just heard about it in that piece. The last 3 years, since going back to when they were ranked #1 preseason in 2009 to where they are now, there are fans that are disgruntled. It's not just about Boise State. It's about 6-7 last year, the first losing season that they've had since 1996. And it's about now getting outmanned and getting beaten by these teams like Boise State. Boise State's a great team.
Yeah, that's
Problem is people in the SEC don't respect the country. They don't respect Boise State. Yeah. That's a good football team, and it's a physical team.
It's not just crazy folks on the call-in shows, by the way. You talk to powerful Georgia people. They're unsettled. It wasn't a regularly scheduled item. You heard Sean McDonough talk about the trustees meeting. It came up briefly, but it came up. The concern about the coach. So.
Well, you have to have a plan always, and you have to have a course of action. But it's also going to be something that this game right here, guys, even if Georgia loses this game, you lost to the 12th ranked team in the country. How do you finish? It's not just about the first 2 games of the year. How can you run the table, and how can you be competitive at every ball?
But the problem is, after you lose your first 2, after last year going 6-7, where are they psychologically moving forward? Even though they could win, how do you pick the pieces back up after losing the first 2?
I think they do pick the pieces up. That's if they lose season, yes, sir. Okay. This is a good football team, and it'll show it over the year. I think he's a hell of a football coach.
Oh, yeah. There's no
We're not going to get a guy better than Mark Richt.
What was Georgia before Mark Richt got there? Look at Jim Donald and Ray Goff.
And won a few championships. I mean, I'm just saying, sometimes continuity and success in the past, that's not a positive anymore.
That's right.
They want the new guy, the fresh energy, because so many guys have won quickly when they've made a coaching change. We have full analysis of this game coming up. Steve Spurrier, we'll hear from him, and my guy, Big John Isner. Big fresh up. Well, the fans in Georgia maybe not in quite as good a mood as the folks are here, at least at the start of the game. But again, a big opportunity if they can tackle old Marcus Lattimore of South Carolina without the linebacker Alec Ogletree, who's out for this game with a broken foot. And then they got to stop Stephen Garcia, who came off the bench when the Gamecocks were down 17-0 in the opener. 8 drives, 6 touchdowns, ran for a couple touchdowns and protected the ball. They deal with Kellen Moore and all that underneath stuff against Boise State. Now the Dogs better worry about Alshon Jeffrey and the threat downfield. Spurrier, of course, has a running feud with Georgia going back to his playing days as a Gator. It got escalated when he was a head coach. He used to love to poke the Dogs in the eye there between the hedges here. And it hasn't lessened now that he's at South Carolina. He was giving a little grief to the defensive coordinator, Todd Grantham, and his NFL background. Well, I couldn't stop that zone read there. So it's a bad blood game there. It's a brief Spurrier impression. Joe Shad tracked down the real thing.
All right, Coach Spurrier, how would you describe your quarterback situation entering this Georgia game?
Well, Steven's our quarterback. Everybody knows that. We had some competition in preseason, and Connor Shaw actually statistically was a lot better than Steven, so we started him last week. Steven, they each played a quarter. Steven played a little bit better and sort of finished the game. So he's back in the box as a starting quarterback.
Southeastern Conference opener for both teams. How would you describe the significance of this ball game?
Yeah, it's an important game. We all know that, but it's not everything. It reminds me a little bit in the 90s when we'd play Tennessee, almost first game or second game of conference schedule. And, of course, when they had Peyton Manning, we were fortunate to beat them, and that was the only one they'd usually lose, so it was extremely important back then. But I remember one year we lost to them and still won the division, and one year we beat them and we lost the division. So it's not the end of the world for either team, but certainly whoever wins games is a little bit better shape.
South Carolina won this ball game last year behind Marcus Lattimore with 37 carries. Chris, back to you.
The wisdom of Spurrier. Not the end of the world in South Carolina. It might be an old Athens if they go to 0-2.
Speaking of old Peyton Manning, we did beat him every single time. He was
Memory lane for Steve.
Yeah, I love Spurrier.
What about his defense?
I like his defense. You know, all the talk about South Carolina's offense, I want to focus on their defense. In particular, a very versatile player named Melvin Ingram. And this kid is 6'2", 270 pounds. He's lined up at the defensive end position. Watch this. He runs an inside stunt, reads the play, tracks it from behind, goes and make a tackle on the quarterback. Now, this next play, he's lined up at the defensive tackle position. This spin move would make any choreographer very happy. The guard whiffs, he flushes out the quarterback and allows his teammates to register the sack. Now, in this last play, this is probably my favorite Melvin Ingram play so far. He lines up as a hybrid linebacker, defensive tackle, runs an outside stunt, reads the quarterback's eyes, nice soft hands, picks off the ball, carries it like a loaf of bread with a little bit of swag. I'm telling you, Kirk, I like this defense. Aaron Murray and the Bulldogs better watch out for that front seven of the Gamecocks.
Yeah, the secondary didn't play as well as I think a lot of us anticipated against the Pirates last week, so they're kind of looking for a bounce-back week. But you're right, the athletic ability is amazing. But the story last week, to me, if you watched that South Carolina game, was all the talk about Connor Shaw getting the start. He played well at times last year when he had his chances, but this year getting off to a slow start, so they did eventually get the ball to Stephen Garcia, and Stephen Garcia did not look back. And looking back at the game, I thought the timing and what he was able to do with Alshon Jeffrey was really a big key. And let's take a look back at the game, kind of a closer look at Garcia in the year, the quarterback, brought to you by Degree Men. And you'll see the timing between he and maybe the most talented receiver in the country, good size on the outside, Alshon Jeffrey. Look at the timing here. He barely gets his foot down, but it's kind of got the offense going and got him into rhythm. This is the thing that people underestimate. He's got enough athletic ability that if you spend too much time thinking about Marcus Lattimore, 21, he can pull it out on the zone read. And here, showing some quickness to be able to accelerate upfield and score a touchdown. Again, creating momentum for this offense. And then when things break down, he gets a block there by Lattimore into the end zone for a touchdown. The complement of Marcus Lattimore in the backfield, Alshon Jeffrey on the outside, is very, very important to Garcia, not just today, but for the entire season. Chris talked about this, but 8 drives versus Shaw having 5. Look at the touchdowns in that second column. 0 for Shaw, 6 for Garcia. Is there any question what direction that Steve Spurrier is going now with Stephen Garcia? But to me, against a very athletic Georgia defense, you look at the way Georgia played defensively against Boise, that was a good offense they went up against, and it was more of Kellen Moore picking them apart than really Doug Martin. So they're going to try to come after Lattimore, and I think it's going to be very important that, again, we see Garcia with that rhythm and finding Jeffrey and company.
Well, Georgia needs to do the following things and do them very well if they're going to upset South Carolina. They can beat South Carolina, but they got to do the following things. Offensive line needs to get space for running back Isaiah Crowell. Number 1, that guy can run. Oh, Mike Martin.
Oh. I think we rolled the Michigan film here. We'll get to this.
That's right. I'll get him next week. Now, are we on Georgia, South Carolina?
You're good. You're killing them.
South Carolina.
They got to block people. They got to block people.
You love this freshman running back, Isaiah Crowell.
Isaiah Crowell.
That's your guy.
Georgia needs to do the following things. Run the ball and then pressure the quarterback. Blitz them. Go after that Garcia and them. South Carolina is very confident. They won 4 in the last 5 games. I think South Carolina's going to win the game real close.
You going to pick it now or later?
I got South Carolina. I think South Carolina's going to win, too.
Absolutely.
You get big games in the SEC in the East and the West. Then you got everybody in the world like State, including Pollock, who's not even up. Just first for the heck of it, quadruple not so fast.
Wow.
Defending national champs at home.
We'll keep you honest
South
on that.
Carolina favored at Georgia.
I like South Carolina. I like the Gamecocks. I like their defense a lot. I think they're going to really put a lot of pressure on Aaron Murray.
South Carolina, they win it.
I like South Carolina. I think Marcus Lattimore and Stephen Garcia, Alshon Jeffrey, again, that combination just too tough for Georgia.
That's a 4:30 Eastern game on ESPN.